Welcome everyone to another episode of Holistically Us. I'm your co-host Myra.
And I'm your co-host Nancy.
And together we are Holistically Us.
On today's episode, we're going to give you the quick and dirty, meaning we're going to talk about the facts that you might not know or that you might be wondering about in regards to acupuncture.
Yeah, so to start off, our first fun fact or quick and dirty fact, or what is it?
Yeah.
Quick and dirty
Yeah. It's not dirty, but it's going to be quick, y'all.
It's not going to be, yes. Did y'all know that the word acupuncture actually comes from the Latin word acus, which means needle, and pungere, which means to prick. And please don't come at me for the pronunciations because honestly, I'm not 100% sure here. So acupuncture means to a needle to prick.
Yeah, that makes so much sense.
I didn't know this until very recently, guys. So y'all are already ahead of the game.
They skipped that part in school.
They just skipped that part in school.
But we're happy they taught us how to prick with needles correctly.
Right.
So originally, acupuncture needles were not made out of stainless steel. Instead, they were made of stone, of bone, or bamboo.
Ouch. I can't even imagine the needles being made out of that now.
God. I know. See, that por si, sometimes, I'm like, they're little but mighty. Imagine the bamboo.
Oof.
No.
Que nos salven.
I'm so thankful for the ancestors.
Yes, very much so. On that note, did you guys know that the needles are sterilized, prepackaged, single-use stainless steel now? So no reusing, and they're very tiny but mighty, like Nancy said.
Yeah, thank God, porque that's more sanitary.
Definitely.
So the first written information about acupuncture was actually written on bamboo, and those bamboo scrolls still exist today.
That is impressive to have a still standing bamboo script today after 2,000 plus years.
Mm-hmm. I know.
And you know, it reminds me of the paper that the Mayans use, made out of like the agave, the Maya huel. Because they used to write on that too.
Yeah. I remember when I first learned this, I was so jelly. Porque I was like, oh, I wish we had all the original information from like the Aztecs and the Mayan and all our ancestors. Imagine all that information that was lost.
Yeah. All this like native knowledge. Just
yes. I had all the jelly.
Definitely. And now, but we're very grateful that because things were so preserved in China, that is why things are still standing today.
Yeah, and I'm also grateful that they were willing to share that information with the rest of the world.
Definitely. Yeah, because and this is like some mighty medicine that they're sharing with the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Did y'all know that there are more than 2,000 points on the body?
I know.
We have to learn a lot of these points at school. We have to know all these points at school.
That's what I was saying. I was like, I know, because it was so hard to remember and study all these points.
Oh my goodness, yes. And they're all like singular points in the body that we can, it's a lot.
It is a lot, especially for like the national exams or the board exams, porque you don't know what they're going to pull from. So you have to just study everything and hope that you remember that point.
Yep.
So along the same studying route, did you know that there are 59 channels overall? However, there are some schools of thought that think that there are more.
Yeah. And we also have to learn all these channels at school.
Yes.
It's a lot of
It's,
information.
it's called channel theory.
Channel theory, guys. Um, Also, I get this question asked a lot because we sometimes we use acupuncture and TCM interchangeably, and they're not really interchangeable. TCM is traditional Chinese medicine, and so we're trained in TCM health, so that includes herbal medicine, nutrition, Chinese medical massage, cupping, moxa, washa, energetics, and movement such as Tai Chi and Qigong. And acupuncture is one of the modalities under TCM, which is traditional Chinese medicine.
Hmm. Yeah, so that's why when you go see a licensed acupuncturist, we give nutritional recommendations. A lot of times based on the seasons, right?
Yeah.
We can prescribe herbal formulas for different ailments. We can do we can give you recommendations to do at home as far as movement. So, yeah, it's for sure more than just the acupuncture.
Yeah. The acupuncture is one of the tools that we have under our arsenal belt of tools.
Hmm. Um, Also, did you know that more insurances are covering acupuncture now? So you can feel free to ask your acupuncturist if they accept insurance. And if they do, then that is a resource that you can take advantage of.
Yeah. And depending on the state, there's different medical groups that take insurance as well. So always check in with your local acupuncturist. Also check in with your insurance to see if they are covering them.
Mm-hmm.
In 2003, the World Health Organization published a review of clinical trials of acupuncture, and they endorsed the use of acupuncture for over 200 symptoms and diseases. However, we're really most known in the Western world for our pain management, but we want our listeners to know that we can help with most ailments except treating cancer directly. With cancer, we can help with the side effects from chemo or radiation. We can help strengthen the body so it can withstand some of the treatments. Also, with cancer, there's a lot of mental health. There's a big mental health toll that it takes. So we can really help with like
Mm-hmm.
the mind, body, spirit aspect of that. And of course, if there's surgery needed, we can't really do the surgery. Well, we really can't do the
We
surgery,
can't do
but we can
the
strengthen your body before,
surgery.
and we can help the recovery after the surgery.
Hmm. Yeah, we do see faster recovery times with people who do a combination, right? So this is where like Eastern and Western work together in a very beautiful way.
Yeah, and we
Um,
can help a lot of the side effects with a lot of patients going through chemotherapy treatments, whether that looks like radiation or chemo or surgery, a lot of host of side effects that come with it. Acupuncture is very effective at helping with that.
mhm. And this ties into the next fact, which is that acupuncture can be used preventatively. So, if we are trying to just strengthen our bodies, if we're trying to strengthen our guts, that sounded weird, but like our gut health.
Our gut health is so important. It's
Yeah.
very underrated, but it's so important.
It's some people come and see us for what we call like the monthly wellness treatment, and it's just a time where we can just help balance you, help keep your channels unblocked, help uh, calm down your nervous system. So now you know that that's a resource out there.
And on that line too, like when it's the change of seasons, oftentimes you get an influx of patients who get colds and flus. And if you know you're a person that that can constantly get a cold or flu or allergies whenever these season changes are happening, acupuncture is so effective at helping with those transitional times. So
Mhm.
definitely get to an acupuncturist to help you out.
Yes, cuz right now a lot of my patients are getting sick, and as soon as the first one came in telling me that they felt like they were getting a cold, I was like, "Nope, immune point. Everyone's getting the immune point." And I started like posting about it that people are getting sick so people can start taking their tecitos, their elderberry syrup. So for sure the seasons affect our health.
They definitely do. And also there's seasons like in the world, like summer, fall, those kinds of seasons. But then there's also
Mhm.
seasons, for example, people who have children in school, right? When the school starts, then there's an influx of sickness, not only for the kids,
Mhm.
but for the parents because the kids are picking up sicknesses at school. Also, there's winter break. And then when they rejoin the group after winter break, there's another influx of sickness. So that's also another good time to go to an acupuncturist.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think what's cool is for example, it goes back to balancing, right? Balancing the body. So with the seasons, something that I started noticing when I first moved to Texas and treating here is that the summers they're really hot. And so people were coming in and their tongues were red or they had the little red like petechia, which are little red spots. Um and I had to work more on taking heat out of the body to help the balance out people's bodies, right? Um, so it also depends on the state because in
Right.
California that wasn't the case because it's not as hot as Texas. And for example, places that snow, right? We don't want to take out heat. So the seasons are so important.
They are important. Yeah. Yeah. In
Yeah.
Santa Cruz, you get a lot more dampness,
Mhm.
a lot more during winter, during these very cold, wet months, you get a lot of joint pain and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So, yeah,
Mhm.
seasons are important, geographical locations important. So,
Mhm.
any sort of
Yeah.
transitional stuff, like if you're also moving from state, right? Like if you're in California and you're going to move to Texas, also, that's a transition. Important.
Yeah. And then the other thing I thought about is, and this is a tangent, but it's so cool, I think, is that our ancestors grew up in certain areas, right? And certain climates. And so our bodies are technically meant to be in those climates as well. So for me, I do feel the healthiest when I am in like a warmer weather.
Same.
So growing up in the snow, I just remember like, oh, mis huesitos. And
Yeah.
I love the snow, but every time we would go to Mexico and it was nice and warm, my movement was so better. So that's another thing to take into account is just our ancestral seasons and how the seasons looked in the areas where they are from.
Facts, and I agree wholeheartedly with that. And on kind of like a side tangent to that, it food, right? Like I
All the
feel, yeah,
food.
food. For example, during the winter is like champurrados, pozoles, caldo de res,
Mm.
all of these like soup, brothy, very
Ugh,
yummy, very warm foods, and eating
yes.
with like ancestrally is
Mhm.
ultimately it. When I eat food that my ancestors ate, that's where I feel the best. Like that's where my body
Yes.
feels the best. Similar to what you were saying, going to Mexico in the warmer climate, same. The cold here, I'm like, oh, my body cannot. My body does not want to handle this
Mhm.
cold because it's not used to it. So it's so
Yeah.
interesting how just even what we eat is
Yeah.
ancestrally so important.
Yeah, and even like our skin, right? Because we just get more sun in those areas too. And so we tend to see less vitamin D deficiency. But if you live in like colder climates, right, then you start seeing that influx of the vitamin D deficiency.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, it affects everything.
Yeah. And this is also why we talk about how acupuncture tailors to the individual. And it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't just have you under, you're not just as a collective whole. You're literally an individual who has a different genetic makeup, has a different
Mm-hmm.
geographical landing point at this state in your life, you know? Just
Mm-hmm.
everything, you take everything into account. Like you were saying, Texas versus California, but then where are you from? So this is why acupuncture is so amazing because it takes everything into account.
Yes. Yes. And I remember another tangent. Mira, we should call this one the tangent series, no the the like sabías que. Is that I remember my first acupuncturist told me like in reality we don't really the disease or the diagnosis that you get doesn't really affect the treatment that much because we're not treating your disease, we're treating your body. So even whatever diagnosis you have, it's so unique to you. And it's so unique to the way that you live and the way that you eat and where you live. So you're right that everything is tailored to you. And the treatments are so unique to everybody.
Mm-hmm. And like we can have patients coming in for the same thing, right? Like a
Mhm.
cold and have completely different treatments.
Mhm. Yeah. Yep. Love it.
On that note, why it's really important to go to a licensed acupuncturist is because we get 3 to 4 years of graduate program training, plus about 2,000 clinical hours, and sometimes more, to get a license. And on top of that, we have to do continuing education to maintain our license. And I forgot to mention that in order to get our license, we have to go through a rigorous acupuncture board exam.
And that
So
was so hard. Oh, that
there's
has been
that.
the hardest test I've ever taken in my life.
Yeah.
I'm still, I don't know. I think about it and I just, I don't know. PTSD, girl.
I
Like,
know. For our listeners out there, I'm in the process of taking it. So I'm stressing out, but I cannot say that it's the hardest yet because I'm not there yet.
oh,
But I
I'm like,
hear
I'm sorry. No, my God. It's so doable. It's doable. It's difficult. And you will do it, girl.
I'll do it. It'll happen. It's just,
Mm-hmm.
I hear from everybody it's so hard. And the training, just the training itself, you know, like the 3 to 4 years, just so
Mm-hmm.
rigorous, so fast paced, so much
Mm-hmm.
information. And then our clinical hours. And then on top of that, the testing. Just, yeah.
Oh
Go
my
to a
God.
licensed acupuncturist.
Yeah. No, for real. I remember just when cuz we they kind of like ease us into seeing our own patients,
Mhm.
but from the first time that we had it was called theater in our school, and it was like the patient comes in and they're in the front, and like I don't know, like 10 students are in the room and we're just sitting there taking notes. And we help out here and there, but we're not seeing the patient or treating the patient at that point, like putting in needles. But they told us you're going to get to the point where you just see your own, and then we go and report back to the licensed acupuncturist that's overseeing us, and then they approve our treatment, and then we go in the room and we do it. Um, pero me acuerdo la primera vez. I was like so scared. Oh, it's a lot of stress for sure.
Well, you just don't know what to expect,
Yes.
and they just kind of throw you in this room, and there's a patient, and the patient has a host of things, and you're like,
Mhm.
what's gonna happen?
Yeah, y la cosa es que you have to learn to manage like personalities. Porque sometimes when people are dealing with pain, for example, they're angry, which makes sense and totally understandable. And it's difficult for us because then it just like we have to manage that anger at the same time in the way that people speak to us sometimes. Um, and then if they come in with multiple things, you know, we have to figure out like what is the best way to go about it, because sometimes we can't treat all 10 things that people are wanting help with.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, all that to say, this is why you should go see a licensed acupuncturist.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, just like quickly as a side note, I was just thinking about this. I think the biggest shocker for me, my first theater class, like Nancy was mentioning, our first ever clinical class is called theater, was just hearing the sheer amount of information that the patient was disclosing.
Mm-hmm.
I was really expecting more like, hey, me duele el brazo, and then tómale, like a couple needles and we're
Tómale.
done.
Bam.
I just because I was coming in with a very limited knowledge of what the medicine was. So I was
Mm-hmm.
thinking, I was excited about it, excited to venture on this journey, but I was not expecting just the sheer amount of trauma processing that was going on, of disclosing of not only physical ailments, but a lot of mental traumatic experiences that the patient was experiencing. And so that was very interesting to just think like, wow, I wonder if this patient goes into their Western doctor and discloses the amount, just even half of the amount of
Mm-hmm.
information that they
Mm-hmm.
disclosed here, and how to navigate that. And like you were saying, what do we work on when you're coming in with like 10 things? So,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Yeah. We want to let everybody know that we can treat a variety of things, right? So, women's health, male and female fertility, things like thyroid problems, diabetes, TMJ, depression, insomnia, PTSD. I mean, the list goes on and on. So if you have any questions as to if we can help with something, then just feel free to reach out and ask, and we will let you know. Next, did you know that there were some acupuncturists in China who needled the emperor directly? So they had to make sure that the emperor did not feel the needles as they were going in. So this is how different needling techniques came about. And one of those techniques is called the flying needle technique. So one of the founders of our school actually knows how to do this technique, because I think she needled the last emperor, right? If I remember correctly.
I'm not 100% sure on that. You might have a little more
Okay.
insight on
But I mean, don't quote us on that then.
that.
Pero she she had this technique where it literally looks like the needle's flying out of your hand. And she never actually would like physically push the needle into the body. And I asked her, well, actually, my first ever acupuncture class was with her. And we were supposed to needle each other the first day.
Wow.
And she was like, let me show you how to do it. But she did it. And all you see is like, if the needle's in my hand, she just kind of like, it looked like she just opened her hand and the needle flew into the body and to exactly the point. So I asked her, how do you do that? And she said that it's with the chi, the energy, the life force of your body, that she had to practice for years how to harness that inner energy. And that's what she uses to like push the needle into the skin. And
Does she
trust me,
flick
Mayra,
it?
she doesn't flick it. It just opens. No sé
Mm.
cómo, how to describe it. Pero I swear I tried for a year, and I would try really hard to harness my chi. And I would try to flick needles into oranges or chickens, like chicken feet, or not
Yeah.
chicken feet, chicken thighs.
Mm-hmm.
Y pues it never went in. Pero
Keep trying, girl. You'll get it.
I want to.
That sounds amazing. That sounds pretty. I've had a treatment from her, but I didn't get to witness the flying needle technique. And to this day, I'm super jealous that you got to see that on your first day.
Yeah, no, it was, I mean, I wish I would have seen it later on in school because I would have understood more. But seeing it the very first day, I was like, whoa,
That
how
must
do
have
I
been like a mesmerizing experience to
yeah,
watch, like a flying
yeah,
needle.
it was. It was.
Also, raising the bar way high, because how can they show you that day one?
Very high. Very high. And then she's like, "Nomás nos enseñó así." And then she's like, "Okay, now you go do it." And
Okay, I
I was
see.
like, "What?" And somebody's just gonna stick a needle in me because we practice on each other. So it was a lot of feelings.
Yeah. One day you'll get your flying
Hmm.
needle.
Yeah, I hope.
On that note, there are a couple of places in the body we don't needle. We don't go into the eyes. Los ojos están fuera. We cannot. Um,
Hmm.
I mean,
Oh my
están
god,
adentro de tus sockets. So they're not outside, but we can't needle. um, we don't needle the breast, like,
Mm-mm.
directly into nipples, that kind of stuff. We really don't needle that. We can
Mm-mm.
needle above and below, but not directly into the breast. We don't needle the belly button. We don't go straight into the belly button, but there are some schools of thought that believe that it's okay to needle kind of inside and around the belly button. Um,
Mhm.
we've gotten this question asked. We do not needle the vagina. And
Mhm.
we most definitely do not needle the penis. That one is of high concern to a lot of my patients who've asked me.
Yeah, the
uh,
men
we
or those who
needle
identify.
surrounding tissues, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
But we do not needle the penis or the vagina.
No, we don't. Okay, so now that the men feel more reassured, I am going to go with my patient story for this episode. So I saw a patient who came in to see me for erectile dysfunction. And that was interesting just because it wasn't, it's almost like we had to work around everything that was possibly contributing to the erectile dysfunction, right? So it's not like we just go straight into just needling. We talked about the stress that this person was feeling around the relationship because, there's always family members that have opinions and that don't approve or they want to put their 2 cents. And so that was causing stress. And as we know, stress can affect an erection. And we talked about diet and what they were eating, and how just based on this person's constitution, what they were eating was not supporting uh, healthy, like blood circulation, you could say, which is huge for when we're trying to get, well, when men are trying to get an erection. Um, the ways that we went about treatment was the acupuncture. Um, and actually, this person felt the most help from medical qigong. So more of the energetics.
Oh.
They would come in. We would talk about just any new changes, um, how it went with them with the recommendations at home, what they were struggling with, and then they were able to just lay down. We would put in the needles, the points, and then during that time as they're resting, then we would go and do the medical qigong, which for those of you who aren't familiar with medical qigong, what it is that we are able to energetically feel the body, and people experience energetics in different ways. So there's people who experience it uh, by color, right? So they see different colors in the body. Or there's people that experience it by, I've heard, like they get sounds. Um, for me, what I experience is temperature changes. So whenever there's stagnation and in a certain area or a certain channel, I feel cold in my hand. And that's how I know to focus there. And then there's different techniques that we're trained to do to help move that energy and that stuckness. You can call it stuckness in that organ or in the channel. So we did a lot of medical qigong, and I think within, I want to say like 3 weeks, this person was able to get an erection. And then after that, the next thing to start working on is maintaining the erection. Um, this was while I was at school. So I wasn't able to see the full trajectory of this patient.
Mm-hmm.
So I only got them for that beginning part. And I don't know what happened for the end of that. So I'm sorry. Los voy a dejar with the cliffhanger. Yo no sé qué pasó. I just know what we did in the beginning.
Wow, so the stress was contributing to his erectile dysfunction?
Yeah, for him, it was more of the stress of, and it, I mean, yeah, it was the family dynamics, pero también it was everyday life, right? Like the finances, the just things that also come up in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think it was a lot of mental.
Wow. Interesting that like it goes in phases. Like first get an erection, get the blood flow going, and then maintain it.
I don't know if it goes in phases. I just know that's how this one went down.
Oh.
How
Okay.
this happened. Yeah. And also for our listeners, there are herbal formulas that help with erectile dysfunction. I again wasn't there for that part, so I don't know if this patient got or agreed to take formulas, or if they did, or if they didn't, no sé.
And while there's laying there on the table and you're doing or you were doing the medical qigong as a student, were you looking for those areas of like cold? Like as you were were you scanning the body per se, or were you doing anything particular?
No, yeah. So in the beginning, so after they laid down, right, we would put the needles, and then we just scan the entire body. So es como que al principio hacemos una limpia on the body, and then of course you do a limpia on yourself. And then after that limpia, then we would start at the feet, and then you work your way up to the crown, and you know, you feel the organs, you feel the hands, todo, and then you see where that you get that sensation, that feeling.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Does the patient also feel it?
So yeah, actually a lot of times they do. Mm-hmm. I have found that the more stagnation a patient has in the body, the less they feel the energy.
Wow.
And have you experienced that too? Porque I noticed también with needles, if patients have more stagnation, so for example, let's say somebody has had 10 car accidents, just naturally the body is going to have more stagnation porque the channels need more work after that, right? I noticed that they don't get the needle sensations as much. And then the more that we work with them, then there comes a point that they're like, oh my God, I felt like, I don't know, let's say we needled the thigh, and they're like, oh my God, I felt that in my toe. And then we just say, oh, well, that's where the channel runs.
Yeah, I definitely have seen that. I've seen that where like there's a lot of stagnation and they're disconnected to that part of the body sometimes. So it's very interesting.
Yeah. So I think with this patient, again, it was more of the stress, the mental like toll that it was taking on him. And he just benefited a lot from the energetics.
Yeah, opening up the blood flow because it needs to flow, like you said, down there.
Yeah. It needs to flow, y'all. Not just down there, but everywhere.
It's important to have it flow, free flow everywhere. Contain
Yeah.
free flow. Porque también no fuera.
Mhm. Yeah, but I think a lot of people would be surprised to know that we can help with things like erectile dysfunction,
Yeah, and
right?
also using not only acupuncture but medical qigong, which is another part of another modality that we work with.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
for sure.
that's pretty surprising.
Yeah.
I was
It
trying
is
to I was
surprising.
trying to think of the word.
Yeah, and of course, like all modalities are not for everybody. There's people that don't believe in energetics, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
I normally don't offer that off the bat. Yeah, when people are more, they tell me that they're open to that, or if they hear that I know how to do that, then and they reach out, then I'm willing to do those sorts of treatments. But it's not something that, like, I never push anything on anybody. It's just whatever you feel comfortable with. And if that's something that you're not, that's okay, right?
Mm-hmm. Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of like on that line for my patient story today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I worked with them energetically as well, but let me just back up for a little bit. So I want to preface this by saying that I'm not licensed yet. I finished my school and I have my degree in acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine, but I'm in the process of getting my license. So all these cases that I kind of talk about with you guys are really cases that I had while I was at school at the clinic.
Mm-hmm.
In this particular case, it was a patient that came in who was having a lot of fibromyalgia pain.
Mm-hmm.
And I find it interesting that not a lot of people know that we can treat fibromyalgia. I mean, they know we can treat pain, but
Mm-hmm.
fibromyalgia pain I felt was an interesting side tangent that patients didn't think we could help with.
Mm-hmm.
So he came in with a lot, or excuse me, they came in with a lot of pain. And they were struggling to take deep breaths. And so as we were going through their treatment plan, which was we were working twice a week for a couple weeks. We ended up working on scar tissue. They had a
Mm-hmm.
transgender reaffirming surgery, and they were having a lot of issues taking deep breaths. And it was really interesting when we were working together how a lot of the stuckness, a lot of the stagnation was really in the areas where they had done, because they had gotten a double mastectomy. And so
Mm-hmm.
the scarring there was really preventing a lot of flow, the free flow. So we
Mm-hmm.
ended up really working on that scar tissue. And the way that we worked on it was, of course, with needles. I also kind of worked a little bit with Qigong. And the most effective thing that I feel this patient got was self massage because they were very
Mm-hmm.
disconnected. There was an area that because they were going through the surgery and there was a lot of, it was just a very heavy surgery, it had been a very hard life. So this area particularly was very rough for them to connect to. So they weren't even touching it. They didn't want to see themselves in the mirror. They didn't want to reflect on what that had meant. There were a lot of feelings surrounding that because there wasn't a lot of support at home and not a lot of support
Mm-hmm.
outside of home, so it was really rough. So we ended up
Mm-hmm.
working energetically to free the channels and create a free flow in their body, but also we were working to accept and connect and recognize that
Mm-hmm.
that's who they were in this moment in time. So a lot of people would be very interested to know that we can help for fibromyalgia pain, but we can also help for scar tissue, scarring,
Mm-hmm.
um, and scarring not only on a physical level but on an emotional level, because that scar
Yes.
that they had was way
Oof.
deeper than just the double mastectomy. It meant so much to finally be seen for who they
Yeah.
were.
Yes. Oh my God. I love how you said that. Like scarring on the soul, scarring
Mm-hmm.
on your spirit. Dang. I have so many questions. You know, I have questions for days.
Échale.
So, my first question is how do you feel energy?
It's interesting because when you were talking about how you felt the energy and you said you felt the area cold, I actually feel the area, I feel it in temperatures and I
Mm,
feel it with heat. Like I feel it hot. That's
mm,
usually the area that needs the most love. Um,
mm,
and I also see it in colors.
mm.
But my color
Same.
palette is limited to two colors, which is very interesting and can sometimes be
Mhm.
confusing because it's orange and red.
Oh. Yeah, and it's interesting que también those are considered more hot colors.
Yeah, but it's sometimes it's just I have to double confirm with the temperature and the seeing because
Yeah.
orange can sometimes look a little red.
Yeah. That's so interesting. And then do you also hear like I don't know, advice from your ancestors almost?
I
Like the
don't know
stuff
that I
cuz
would.
sometimes I don't know yeah, like I don't know how to describe it, but sometimes when I'm doing like energetic treatments, it's como que just something talks to me in my head and it's like ask about this. And it just seems so random that I'm like, why would I ask about that? Pero when I do follow that, I don't know, inner knowing, that guidance, I it takes us down this really profound road most of the times. But do you experience something like that?
Yeah, totally. I was gonna say I don't hear it per se, like as a voice, but yeah,
Mhm.
with this, particularly with this patient, they had come in with the fibromyalgia, and I mean, nowhere in my mind was I gonna be like, how are you breathing? I mean, sometimes we ask that, but the breathing part,
Mhm.
I was like, can you take deep breaths? And
Mm.
then also just being the next question was we it was talking about his I was talking about their surgery. They
Mhm.
identify as he and they, so sometimes I try to fluctuate both. But yeah,
Mhm.
so I was asking like how do they feel their surgery, if it was supported or if it wasn't supported, if they felt like they had a team behind them. So yeah, just following the threads of knowledge like that really leads you to these very
Mhm.
deep knowings.
Yeah. So my other question is how do you do scar treatments?
We do different things with the scars. I depends on if they just had a surgery, you don't touch it, you don't
Yeah,
go into it. It
for
has
sure.
to be fully healed
Yeah.
before you go really near it.
Mhm.
We started off first with just doing breathing exercises because there was just so much
Mhm.
stagnation,
Mhm.
and just kind of like deep meditative breathing exercises. Then the next phase of that was going in with needles and doing meditation and breathing exercises with the needles. And we do something called like turtling. Um,
Mhm.
so we just kind of go above and below the scar.
Mm.
A lot of self massage. So right before we started
Mhm.
any treatment, we would start with just breathing practice, and then we would set our intention for the day, and then I would have them touch wherever they felt. Obviously, like we had a lot of conversations about what they felt comfortable with, how far they wanted to go.
Mhm.
At the beginning, they didn't want to touch it at all. They wanted me.
Mhm.
They would allow me to touch it. They were okay with me touching it. They felt safe with me, but they did not want to touch it themselves.
Mhm.
And then as the treatments progressed, because I got to see this patient throughout an entire term, so I saw them quite a good amount of time.
Mhm.
And so as the treatments progressed, they started to feel comfortable touching it themselves. And so
Mhm.
he touched it. He would touch it, meditate on it before, set an intention for releasing. There was a lot of emotional release that they wanted to do,
Mhm.
because it was a version of themselves that they were never happy with. And so they felt like that
Mhm.
was a constant visual reminder. So there was a lot of that, setting that intention of releasing that. And then we would go with needles. And then I would send them home with just a recommendation of using anything like coconut oil or just castor
Mhm.
oil, just to massage and remove kind of like the scarring from there.
Mhm. And what do you think was the most beneficial thing to help this patient feel comfortable enough to do self massage?
I think just feeling accepted, wholeheartedly accepted
For
in the
sure.
treatment.
Yeah.
Um, I think that when they started getting treatment for fibromyalgia, it was on their chart that they had gone through the surgery, that they were still going through, they're still taking hormones and everything.
Mhm.
But I think we created together, them and I, a space in that room where they felt held
Mhm.
and heard and accepted just as they were.
Mhm. Good.
And yeah, I feel like that ultimately felt, at least from what they told me as I was massaging it, they felt like, hey, there's
Mhm.
no judgment behind it. You don't see
Mhm.
it as like whatever negative thing that they were thinking that was.
Mhm.
And so it led to some curiosity of like, hey, I feel accepted, I feel held, I feel seen for who I am. She's touching it and the
Mhm.
world's not collapsing. Let me try it. And the first time that they tried it, I was in the room with them.
Mm.
Because they want, I didn't just go like, oh, ve a la casa y tú lo haces.
Yeah.
It was like, it was always, would you like to try? Or you'll let me know when you want to try. And we started treatment.
Mhm.
And that day they were like, today I feel like it's the day that I want to try.
Mm.
And I said, inside I'm like, yes, yes,
Yeah.
we're here.
Yeah.
But outside I said, okay, at any moment, if you don't feel comfortable, we can always stop. We'll go very slowly. And
Yeah.
I think they just felt safe and they were like, hey, the world's not collapsing.
Yeah.
And I think that's what that kind of made them feel they could do it
Yeah.
outside.
That's such a healing thing for sure. Like when people feel just heard and seen and accepted. And I think, like you just mentioned, it's like we have our internal feelings sometimes about things, or like, like so much joy when they come in, and we still have to be like, oh, keep it together. Right. So you guys are hearing like our internal thoughts here,
Mm-hmm.
but in the room, we're very like, más like professional, and like it's not about our feelings, it's about their experience and their feelings. And it's just so powerful when people feel, just even have the space to talk.
Yeah. Just
Hmm.
talk and not be judged for what they're saying or
Yeah,
how
and
they sound.
there's really no judgment. Like, at least I know, for like for you and I, when our patients come in, it might be like I might freak out internally porque I don't know how, like I have to figure out how to go about certain things. Um but it's not coming from a place of like judgment. It's coming from a place of like, I really want to help, and I really want to see like the best way to get there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love this story. I have so many questions, but like we can't. I could be here for 3 hours. Like, no podemos.
And it's true. Nancy could be here for 3 hours asking me questions.
Mira, this is why we're friends, because you accept me.
Facts. This is
I
a
know,
safe
dude.
space.
Yes. I know, it's funny because one of my patients, I was like, but why? right? I'm like, did you ask but why? And she's like, you always ask that. That's such a good question. I'm like, yes. I think this is why I have a hard time dating sometimes because I'm always like, why? Like, hey, do you want to go to this restaurant? Why? Like, why do you want to go
Oh my God.
there? Thank you for accepting me.
Always. Then thank you for accepting me.
Pues ya sabes.
Pues ya sabes, no me queda de otra.
No. No, I love you. But okay, so now we want to go into our holistically us moments. Um, so I actually want to have my holistically us moment right now. There's something that I have been called to say and share with our listeners. So, as you know, the first episode I shared that I cut ties with my family. So, I just want to say that, like, please don't feel sad for me. Like, I get, there's two kind of common responses that I've been getting. And one of them, and not just now, but like when people just find out, right? And it makes sense because family's huge and I agree, it's so important. Um, but from the Latinos, I tend to get, well, familia nomás tienes una, right? Padres nomás tienes uno. And I'm like, trust me, I know. Like, it took me 28 years to come to this decision, and it wasn't easy. And it took like countless hours of therapy and seeing like spiritual healers and doing self like work on myself. And it's like, it's not something that just happened out of the blue that I was like, oh, I don't know, like no me dieron mi domingo, right? Like I'm cutting ties. Like it wasn't like that. Like imagine growing up in a culture where your family is so like deep rooted in you and like people that raised you and that were supposed to like care for you. It had to be something huge for me to come to this decision. So like I just feel like it's not helpful to me to hear those sort of comments. Um and second, the other thing I get is oh, oh, pobrecita. Like, no, guys, like, congratulate me, honestly, porque I live a full life. I have a really good support system. I no longer live in fight or flight. Like, I'm at peace. And honestly, I don't think that I would have been able to get my doctorate if it wouldn't have been for that decision. Porque my life wasn't for me, it was for other people. So I think like be happy for me porque it was the first time that I chose myself. So that is my moment.
Well, congratulations, Nancy, because yeah, cutting ties with family, it's such a massive thing. And like you said, our culture that's rooted in like our parents and just the fact solo tienes una familia y solo tus padres solamente una vez and they didn't know any better. And I mean all the things that people say. So yeah, congratulations because you had the gall to choose you.
Yeah. Y me acuerdo one time I heard somebody like talking about how they thought about their children. And then that kind of sparked something in me and I was like, okay, if or when I have children, um would I want them to grow up around this family? And the answer was no. And so then my next thought was, well, I need to make changes for my future kids. But then right after, I was like, well, why just for my kids? Like, why not for me? Right? Like, obviously, my future kids, if I have children, like, they're going to be valuable, but I am also valuable now. So, why should I wait until I have kids? Why not do the work now and then deal with all the healing that comes after cutting ties and be like a more whole and in tune and aware parent if that comes.
Yeah, you're valuable con kids or sin kids, you know. You're not valuable
Mhm.
until you get to that point in your life. And
Yeah,
honestly,
and
like to the listeners, it just even setting boundaries with family is
mhm,
such a huge accomplishment. Just
yeah.
so the fact that you were like you cut ties is such a big thing. Like for you, so important, and it just it's not a light decision.
No, y como I tried everything. Like I tried the boundaries, but what do you do when the boundaries aren't respected?
Yeah.
You know? Like, ¿qué
Mm-hmm.
haces? So, it was difficult. And it's not to say like that I don't have my moments. Obviously, there's times where it's like it's sad, pero it's I've come to a place where I like truly know what it means to love yourself so much que I'm not willing to sacrifice my happiness for anybody. Porque if I'm not good, then I'm not going to be good for anybody. I'm not going to be good for whoever my future partner is. I'm not going to be good for my if I have children. I'm not going to be good even for my pets, for my friendships, for my patients. Because I also have to be aware of the energy that I bring into the room when I'm treating people. So, like, I can't be in fight or flight when I'm treating patients.
Yeah,
Hmm.
definitely not. And I think
Yeah.
it's just yeah, I think thank you for sharing that because I think a lot of people do go to the like pobrecita and and like you
Hmm.
said, you have a full life and your life is so beautiful.
Yeah. And, I think right now, especially for the holidays, people that are finding out, they're like, oh, like you're alone, right? But it's like, no, how do traditions start? Traditions had to start somewhere. Like, I can start my own traditions now, and I
Mm-hmm.
am. And if I decide to go somewhere for the holidays, it's porque like I feel supported there and I feel welcomed. And I'm not stressed that I'm gonna be in a room with people with certain people. Like I love being around the people that I'm around now. And you can
Yeah.
always build your family. That was a big thing that I learned. Like you can build your own family. It doesn't have to be where you are like you have to be with certain people just because you share blood.
Yeah, I find that to be very fascinating how it's like, oh, you share blood, so tienes que aguantarte todo, anything and
Mhm.
everything. And yeah, you being able to stand here and just share your story and also tell people your truth, which is like you are a whole person. Y como dices, it doesn't mean that there's not a moment where you might get sad here and there, but I feel like that goes with everything, right? With any kind of healing.
Mhm.
Any
Yeah.
any sort of I could be healing through something myself and I get moments of sadness. So that's a normal
Mhm.
part of things, but it does not mean that you're in that all the time.
Yeah, and I think also to clarify, it doesn't mean that I don't love these people. Like or I don't love my family. Like I love them and I can love people from afar, right? And I can love that light inside everybody. And I don't have to be in the same room. Like I don't have to sacrifice my own light to love somebody else's light.
Facts.
Hmm.
Mm. Facts.
But
There's mic drop.
my
Mic drop moment. Yes.
yeah. So to end it, like please don't feel sad for me. Like honestly, if you see me, like high five me, congratulations. If you feel called for, like we don't even have to talk about it. It's okay. Like I'm just saying you don't have to feel sad. And I'm asking to please not just make that comment of like padres nomás tienes unos. Trust me, I know. I am aware.
We can count. We can math.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Yeah, but I mean, thanks for your support. And I really want to hear your moment.
Um yeah, my moment this week it's kind of rough for my moment of the week. I
Mm,
It's been a pretty mellow week. I feel like I've been trying to stay in my truth. Just I feel like the biggest thing this week has been really I've been in this state of awareness where I'm being very aware of the energy that I'm putting out and the energy
Mm,
that I'm letting in.
mm,
Um, because I feel like oftentimes we overlook, we, well, I'll speak for myself. I feel like oftentimes I can really see how much energy other people like las vibras, right, from like a
mhm.
person, and how much they're gonna suck my energy and how much they're gonna give to me, right? Like an energetic currency. I don't know how to
Yes.
describe it otherwise, but just it's cuando caminas en un cuarto and you're like, hey, this feels off, like somebody here, it's just está sacando el aire del cuarto, right? um
Yes.
but I was really noticing just, I think, to stand in my truth and my holistically, like just me moment, is just how much when I'm not feeling well physically or I'm not feeling well mentally or I'm reminiscing about something, how much my energy output can, like how much it extends, how much it can like hit somebody. Cause
Mm,
I feel like I'm pretty self-contained. So if I'm going through something, I feel like my energy is not going to hit somebody, right? Like my partner, I feel like he's not going to notice, or he's not, or he'll notice, pero no le va a afectar.
mm,
But I feel like this week has really been about noticing how much my energy output can affect those around me, and just being very conscious about that and speaking my truth in the sense of, if I'm not feeling well, or if I'm having a moment of like, no say, like right now I'm stressing over something that's not, for example, right, like the boards. I'm going to take the boards in a very near future. So if I'm
mhm,
already preemptively stressing about that, how much of that am I gonna, like the stress gonna hit my partner because he's next to me? So
mhm,
just kind of being
mhm,
aware of how much that can extend outside of me, and having a moment to tell him like, hey, in this moment, I know it does not make sense that I am preemptively stressing about this exam. Um,
mhm,
but that's where I'm at. That's where I'm at. I'm stressing about like if, or whatever X thing I'm stressing about. But if I'm like, I'm
mhm,
preemptively already stressing about this, if you notice me be off, it's because I'm stressing about that. And just consciously that helps so that he can be aware. So it doesn't just come off as like, hey, she's, quiet or reserved, or like her energy, like está como sus vibras están más pesadas. And
mhm.
so I feel like that kind of has been the theme of the week for me. And just for me to be holistically myself, it's really been about recognizing, like, hey, ahorita, it might not make sense that I'm like annoyed about like something, or it might not make sense that thinking about this thing that's happening, like,
Mhm.
whenever. But this is where I'm at. I'm gonna say my truth, and then that way he knows that that's where it's coming from.
So let me see if I understood this correctly. It's like you're working, like just being more like working on communication then, right?
It's working on communication, and I think working on just like being very honest about what it is that at the moment I'm going through. Even if I go through like 10 things
Mm.
in the day. Some days I'm like, oh my
Yeah.
God, and when am I going to
Yeah.
put the Christmas tree up? Oh my God, like I should water the plants over here. And oh my God, that planta necesita, like, needs to get repotted. And I feel like sometimes those
Uh-huh.
little moments, my energy can kind of really shift. Well, not kind of, it really
Mhm.
shifts. And so being able to communicate that to my partner and be like, hey, ahorita, I don't know why, but that planta that needs to get repotted, that I've known it needs to get repotted, that I'm stressing about because I'm stressing about it. And so that's where this
Mm.
energy shift that you're feeling is coming from,
Mm.
so that they don't feel like, hey, es algo que él hizo, or,
Mhm.
something happened. And now it can kind of be really a minor thing, and it can seem like, I feel like
Mhm.
my vibras change really fast. So just being aware of how fast my vibras change and why they're changing.
Mm. See, Mayra, this is why I think you're hashtag marriage goals. Because like this is this is beyond. I'm like, to think about, like, you're aware of feeling your feelings, of communicating these feelings to your partner so that they're not like why does she have a Fuchi face today or something, right? And then like yeah, it's just providing that information, which communication is key.
It is, but it comes, I mean, it honestly comes with a lot of time. And it takes a second because I feel like everybody has their own go-to when they're not feeling good for X reason, they go to something. And so recognizing that that's your go-to, recognizing that your vibras shift, because I feel like when I was younger, I'd be like, no, I'm fine. Like somebody would ask me like, algo pasa? No, I'm fine. I'm good. Why? Okay.
I know. When they're like, are you okay? And then you answer with the tone like, I'm fine.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Are you sure? Didn't I say it?
Yeah. Didn't you like get okay? Yeah.
You want to catch hands? They're like, okay, you're fine.
Yeah. So just recognizing like, hey, my vibras do change, and being like, hey, esto está pasando, and I know it's silly, and I know it doesn't make sense. And oftentimes it's, at least this, not just this week, but this week has been particularly about me working on that. But my husband, he's very good about like, okay, well, ¿qué es lo que puedes hacer ahorita? Like, what can I help you with, and what can we do? Oh. And I'm like, no entiendes, I just want to be upset about it. Because he'll be like, let's repot it. And I'm like, no, like, no.
He's like, easy solution.
Yeah, he's like, easy solution. And I'm like, no, es que no entiendes. I just want to be annoyed about the fact that it needs to get repotted. And I just don't.
Let me feel my feel.
Let me feel my feel.
And yes, please go change the pot.
So yeah, that's been what we've been working. Well, that's what I've been working on this week for sure.
I love that. Well, guys, in the spirit of feeling your feels this week, like always, we encourage everybody who is in this community audio space to please share your holistically you moment of the week. We are so thankful that everyone's here with us.
If you haven't already, please subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Please rate and review it. And you can also follow us on Instagram at Holistically Us.
Remember, you can follow Mayra at Florecer Acupuncture on Instagram. You can follow me at Conexion_Acupuncture on Instagram. Also, guys, we wanted to let you know that we will be uploading the full videos on YouTube. So you can also go and watch us and subscribe there too. And again, thank you so much for being in our community audio space.
Y nos vemos en la próxima.